Welcome to part 6 of our live training process here with our drag race Honda S2000. We're going to learn how we can start to enable our boost control on the top port of our wastegate. We have dual 3-port solenoids, one on the top port, one on the side port. We're going to work with our top port here in this tutorial and start to turn up our boost pressure. We're going to be doing this in a closed loop, hybrid open loop type of situation. I'll explain how that works as we go through our tutorial here. We should at least be able to probably about double what we made off of our wastegate spring, which was around 600 horsepower. So we should be around 11 to 1200 horsepower, 50 to 60 pounds of boost here. Let's see what's going to happen. Without further wait, let's jump in so we can check this out.
Welcome back to our live training session here with our Honda Drag S2000. The last tutorial we focused on getting things dialed in for fuel or spark and our knock control on our wastegate spring level, which is about 20 psi. This tutorial we're going to be turning on our boost control solenoid and increasing our boost pressure. We're going to have to go through and make sure our fuel and spark are all dialed in as we turn up the boost into the higher rows in the fuel and spark timing tables. We're also going to have to go and tweak our knock control threshold table, and I'll explain that here in just a little bit. So we have a decent amount of work here to do. We're going to go and use our boost control that we temporarily set up here and a closed loop, open loop kind of hybrid type of control, and I'll explain why we're doing that and what we're doing here. And then we'll find that if we hit a limit into how much boost we can actually get out of this particular spring combination and the 3-port solenoid controlling the top port of the wastegate, we can go and enable the secondary boost control solenoid, which is controlling the side port of the gate, which is going to be a little bit different strategy, but we have all that set up and connected already, which is set up on aux 4, and if we need that solenoid, we can enable it and then start to turn up the boost, and we'll see how all that goes. We're going to keep an open mind here with just the top port solenoid and see how much boost we can achieve. Now, generally speaking, if you have, let's say a 20 psi spring is what we have here, you can usually double the spring pressure, if not go higher than that. So we're going to see how much boost we can get out of this, and then if we can't get enough boost, which is about 50, 60 psi is what we'd like to see out of this turbo, then we're going to have to go and enable that secondary 3-port solenoid and to be able to control the side port of the wastegate. So we're just controlling the top port right now, and with the side port boost control essentially disabled, not doing anything, not energized, it's going to just be acting like the vacuum lines connected as a side port pressure reference to a boost source. So just as it would if it had no solenoid right there. That's where we're at right now. We'll have to see what this is going to do in the boost control, and I'll talk about going in here and dialing things in this closed loop, open loop hybrid method, which is the way we need to dial this in, because if we're using the secondary boost control solenoid, if we need to kick that in, we don't want it interfering with any closed loop routine for the top port primary solenoid control going through all the routine here. So we have no current way in the software to integrate both solenoids in closed loop together. So I usually just run this in this hybrid closed loop, open loop method. And again, it'll make more sense as we go through here and do some pulls and see where we're at. Now, one thing I want to talk about here before we do any tuning is the alternator control. In the last tutorial, we talked about enabling our alternator control in that closed loop format, setting 100% duty cycle out through the alternator control wire, which was pinned on aux 6 for this particular plug and play jumper harness from Boom Slang. Now, I found that it only increased the voltage about a half volt. So normally it was sitting at about 11.8 volts, and it went up to 12.2 volts. It wasn't charging enough. And I did some digging around, and I actually found out that it needs to have, the Honda alternator needs to pass through the OEM dash, which has a battery light bulb in it, and it's part of the alternator control circuit. So what happens is, out of the engine control module, the factory engine control module, the ECU, it sends the charging request out. It goes through that bulb. There's a certain resistance in the bulb, and then it goes into the alternator control wire, which is the white-green wire on the alternator on the Honda. In this case, because the factory dash has been deleted, and we have the AIM dash in place here, which you're not able to see, but it's taking the place of the factory dash, and it's integrated very nicely here, we're having a problem with the alternator actually charging. So the way to get around this, I actually just hooked up a corner signal bulb from an older Honda Civic in line between that white-green wire and a power source. So what's happening now is there's about 20 ohms of resistance on the alternator control wire, and now it's actually able to kick in and start to activate. Now, what I need to do is turn off the alternator control completely here, because just by having that resistance and that circuit completed, the alternator is going to start to charge itself. And I did test this off camera to make sure it was going to work. So we need to go turn off our alternator control. Let's do that right now here. Let's jump over here into our last window called alternator control, and I'm going to go up here to the output and then just go here and select none and to disable this, because we don't need to have any control from the link here controlling the alternator. And if I wanted to do a closed loop alternator control, let's say I wanted to keep it in place, I'd have to wire a 20 ohm resistor in line between the alternator and the actual pin for the engine control module here, the link control module. You have to have something in line there. It has to have a certain resistance. And that's for the charging field in the Honda alternator to actually activate and start to create that charging effect and actually build up the voltage and do what it's actually intended to do. So because we don't have the actual component there in the OEM circuit, which is why we're having a problem, this is very specific to a Honda. So if you're not tuning a Honda, probably don't have to worry about this, but I just wanted to go and be thorough with this. So I fixed the charging problem. It should be better now. When I did have it running, just testing it, it did have the alternator charging at roughly 13.5 volts on the dash. It was showing about 12.8, 13 here in the link. So it's definitely working here at idle, much better than what it was. So that's just something we wanted to take care of before we did any full throttle pulls, because we're going to be pulling a decent amount of load off the alternator, and we want it to charge properly. All right, let's go here and do a store. And let's head back in here into our closed loop tab, and let's talk about our closed loop hybrid method here of dialing in our boost control. So closed loop, open loop, hybrid method. So the way we set this up in the last tutorial is that we actually went in here and we enabled the boost target. We started to populate some of these tables out. We did this engine RPM versus gear. That's fine. We gave it a target. What the target's going to do here is utilize a lookup here in our feed forward wastegate duty cycle table. So whatever I place here, it looks up in the row here of what we want to run for wastegate duty cycle, what we want to send out to that boost control solenoid, which is controlling the top port on this particular vehicle in this configuration. We have it in here. So if I want to go and increase my boost, I'll have to go here and populate values in the table specific to what I'm requesting.
Thanks for checking out our teaser clip. If you want to see the rest of this video and more than 500 hours of current EFI training we have to offer, make sure you click right here. If you want to go and check out more teaser clips from this training course, click here. And you don't want to miss any of the videos we're going to be releasing on this channel, so make sure you subscribe and click here. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you guys later.